You are alone in a room. The lights are dim, the surroundings are silent, but an unseen sound governs everything. Time, the ticking of the wall clock, the digital number at the top corner of your phone, the faint vibration of the smartwatch on your wrist. They all whisper the same thing: go. We think we dominate time, yet most days, time dominates us. So how did humanity domesticate this invisible master? From sundials to factory sirens, from the pocket watch to the Apple Watch. The adventure that began with measuring time turned into a technology that measures, watches, and directs us without us noticing. Today, the watch does not only tell the time, it measures our pulse, our sleep, our steps, even our attention. What you will see in this story is this: the history of watches is the history of our self-management. The first clock was actually the sky. The shadow of the sun told us the flow of the day. The stars told us the rhythm of the seasons. Our glasses poured the now into our palms, grain by grain. Water clocks reminded us that time flows like a river. In the Middle Ages, clock towers rising in the squares made time public for the first time. The morning bell, the noon prayer, the evening shutter. Time became a shared ritual everyone had to obey. Then came a revolutionary little box, the pocket watch. Now time did not whisper from a bell in the square, but from a metal case in our pocket. It was not just a technological progress, it was the privatization of time. Time became ours, and thus punctuality became not only a virtue, but also an identity. The 18th and 19th centuries were not only the age of steam engines, they were the age of punctuality. For factories, time was the direct course of production. Sirens announced when shifts began and ended. Schedules were planned to the second. As railway lines spread across the continent, cities could no longer live by their own time. Standard time zones were invented. They became the backbone of the modern economy. The scientific management approach, dividing work into seconds, eliminating unnecessary movements, removed the sanctity of time and replaced it with efficiency. A worker's 1 minute was a factory's penny. In short, time was converted into money. At the beginning of the 20th century, watches moved from pockets to wrists. At first, they were thought to be women's accessories. Then, the battlefields revealed the truth. In the middle of the map, the order, the compass. If you didn't have time to take the watch out of your pocket, being punctual meant life itself. Military practice popularized the wristwatch. In peacetime, it became the symbol of the modern world. Now the dial everyone carried on their wrist showed not only time but also order, power, and practicality. The watch is not only a machine but also an object of design. Typography, index thickness, the length of the hour, and minute hands, the brightness of the screen, all determine how we feel time. The Bauhaus principle, form follows function, brought a minimalist aesthetic to the dials. Simple dials calm the mind. A crowded dial triggers the feeling of things to catch up on. A daily observation. On an analog dial, we see the rhythm of the day. On a digital dial, time becomes precise. Both are valuable, but they program our minds differently. The end of the 1960s changed the heart of the watch with the quartz crystal. The romanticism of mechanical springs continued, but the precision of quartz vibrations was incomparable. More accurate, cheaper, more accessible watches. The average punctuality of society increased. For the first time, time could be measured accurately by such a wide mass of people. In the 1970s, digital LED watches began a small space age on the wrist. Then came calculator watches, futuristic experiments with micro TVs. The dial turned into an interface that answered not only what time, but also how. The watch became our toy, but at the same time, the architect of our habits. The experiments of the 1990s Models that synchronized data with computers whispered the idea of data on the wrist. The real leap came in the 2010s. Pebble popularized the idea of the smartwatch by bringing notifications to the wrist. Samsung pushed the limits with cameras and apps, and Apple Watch. By combining design, hardware, and ecosystem, it turned the watch into a control panel of life. Today, a smartwatch, health, productivity, daily life, haptic feedback, a gentle touch on the wrist, suppresses sound and guides without distraction. Design elements such as the digital crown preserve the feeling of the classic watch while making the modern interface intuitive. Ancient Greece recognized two kinds of time: chronos, the quantitative flow measured by the clock; kairos, the right moment, qualitative time. In the modern world, we measure chronos perfectly. Calendars are full, notifications never end, to-do lists pile up, but kairos, the weight and depth of a moment, sometimes slips through our fingers. An interesting paradox: the better we measure time, the scarcer it feels. I wasted an hour. Perhaps kairos was hidden right there. Today, money is often paid for time: subscription to skip ads, fast delivery, VIP line, premium support. What we gain is actually minutes. The watch on our wrist is like the control panel of this economy. A gentle vibration 10 minutes before the meeting. A small badge when the daily goal is completed. A quiet reminder for a breathing exercise. Gamified time turns punctuality into satisfaction. But beware, while buying time, it's also possible to be sold with time. Our attention, our data, our habits, they are all new currencies of this economy. In Japan, train punctuality is like a national promise. Even a 1-minute delay requires an explanation. In Germany, punctuality is the measure of reliability. In the Mediterranean, flexibility is the lubricant of socialization. 5 minutes is sometimes a right to conversation. So, time is not only a physical flow, but a cultural agreement. Watch designs also carry culture. Minimal faces give a sense of calm and order. Chronograph-loaded faces call for tempo and function. A society looks at its watch the way it perceives time. A well-designed watch interface is a refuge in the attention economy. Clearing unnecessary complications makes room for kairos. Lowering sound and preferring the haptic touch reduces stress. Analog faces feed the sense of rhythm. Digital faces feed the sense of precision. Small design choices like focus mode or do not disturb dramatically change the course of the day. To manage time is actually to design attention. Smartwatches opened a new dialogue with our bodies. When the pulse suddenly rises, when sleep becomes shallow, when the stress line climbs, we know when this data is used wisely, it brings peace with time. Taking a break at the right time, not skipping a walk, noticing the rhythm of breathing. But constant self-monitoring can also produce fatigue. The anxiety of not hitting today's goal may tire the psychology instead of supporting health. It's not enough to measure, it must be interpreted. Time is not only a number, it's the art of feeling. In the age of remote work, the watch is beyond an office card. Working hours are flexible. Life and work intertwine. New concepts such as the right to disconnect are debates of civilization. Whose time is it? Starting a meeting 5 minutes early is not a skill. Never opening an unnecessary meeting is true efficiency. A well-planned calendar is respect for the time of those you work with. Moments when time becomes our mirror. War map. The officer looks at his wrist and attacks at the same moment. The wristwatch is the invisible commander of coordination. 1 minute at the station. The train is 1 minute early or late. The plans of hundreds of people change in a chain reaction. A screenless Sunday. The smartwatch in the drawer. Time turns from chronos to kairos. A short walk, a long conversation. No measure, but many moments. The future points to even more invisible watches. Non-invasive health measurements, e.g., blood sugar estimation. environmental awareness, noise, light, air quality, personal time coaching based on behavioral clues. Make this meeting 25 minutes, add a 5-minute breathing break, take your walk earlier. With AR VR, the watch may become a time interface spread throughout space. But the real question does not change. Who owns this power? Data, privacy, the right to the moment. To be the master of time begins with remaining the servant of technology. The story of watches is actually our story. From pocket to wrist, from quartz to digital, from smart to artificial. At every step, we learn to understand the language of time better. But no matter how fluent you become in a language, the sentence you say is up to you. At the end of the day, there are two kinds of time. One is the chronos everyone sees. The other is the kairos only you can feel. Chronos asks, how many minutes left? Kairos asks, who does this minute belong to? And the lesson, to be the master of time, begins with being punctual, but meaning lies within the minute. When you look at your watch, look at yourself too. Does this moment multiply you? Let the last word be a reminder, a summary of Seneca's thought. Life is not short, we make it short. Today, owe your time not to others, but to yourself. Because now is not a repetition of any day. It is the reason for all days.